Hello everyone, this is John from RPGs and More. And in today's video, I would like to talk to you about the anatomy of an episode in the Prince Valiant storytelling game. I mentioned a little bit about what episodes were in the previous video. Excuse me. And kind of how they worked. But today I want to kind of hyperfixate, with your permission, if you listen to this video, on what that looks like. Now, the cool part about the episodes in the Prince Valiant storytelling game, especially the ones in the main rulebook, are that the rulebook holds your hand really well on describing all the different elements of each episode and how they work and how they're meant to work together, sort of painting a delightful picture about how to run each one of them. And you get enough information that you can follow the script, as it were, or you can improvise a lot, and you'll have enough to kind of go with. And I think that is a beautiful thing. What's interesting about it is the fact that they use about probably 4 times the space that they have to in order to, explain what's going on. And that extra space is taken up by additional explanations or additional details that most storytellers, especially beginning ones, might wonder if they're erroneous, if they're not necessary. But they kind of help, even if you don't use them. Even if you don't mention all the little details that are given in the description of each scenario, it still helps to have them there because they offer context to what is going on. And context is important. So let's take a look at that. Let's get our handy-dandy rule book. Yep, I dropped it. Aha! Here we go. So, Prince Valiant storytelling game. This is the main rule book. A lot of these, the page numbers might not be exactly the same depending on which version of the rulebook you're using. So I'm bear with me on that one. But we're going to go to the first episode that is listed in the rulebook. And that first episode is a challenge with a knight. It's very basic, and it's meant to be kind of, storyteller's first episode is what it's designed to be. So I don't feel too much of an issue with kind of explaining it in greater detail, because it's kind of what it's there for. It's there to be the explanation of, hey, this is how this stuff works. It's taken me a little longer to get there than I thought I would, but that's okay. Passing the optional rules now. A challenge from a knight number 1. So this is all from the book by Greg Stafford. So I'm not going into the episode book, because there's a separate book that is chock full of extra episodes. I'm not going to go into those because those are all written by different authors, and many of those authors are still very active. All right, so right now I'm just working on episode 1 by Greg Stafford. Greg Stafford, in honor of his memory, brilliant game designer, did a lot of stuff. And I do not mean any disrespect to him. That's one of the reasons why I like doing this channel, is because I really like his work on this system. So let's go with it a little bit. How is this constructed? Well, first off, everything fits on a single page. I'll show you that here, all right? This is the episode, okay? But what's interesting is, if we were to set this up for, say, OSR game, it would probably fit, the whole thing would probably end up fitting in just this first section, because the rest of this is all extra information. I only say that because I'm a big fan in the OSR games of bullet points and having things just be listed in bullet points, and the less information the better, because I like to embellish with my own stuff. However, the Prince Valiant system and setting is so different than what the average fantasy setting and system is. I think the extra explanation is warranted. And hopefully you'll see why as we go through this. I know I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry. It's a habit. All right. So we start with a description of the episode type. And in this case, the type is nuisance. That tells you a lot right there. That type being listed as nuisance. And it gives a brief explanation. At least one adventurer must be a knight for this episode. This is the easiest of the 3 challenge episodes. Use these episodes whenever a challenge could be made, adjusting the situation and introduction scene accordingly. So, so it's a nuisance, but it's also a challenge. So it's a challenging nuisance, or a nuisance of a challenge. Aha. We can be language positive. All right. But what it is designed to be is it's designed to be something that offers a bit of distraction. It might hinder your players in getting to their goal, or it might just distract them for a moment. Maybe you're having a long journey and you don't want to just be narrating, oh, you get up, you travel, you go to bed. Oh, you get up, you travel, you go to bed. Oh, well, something happens. And this could be one of those somethings that's going to distract them for a short while, and then they move on. Or it could be the catalyst to something better. But right now, it's a nuisance and it's a challenge. Okay, so the next start is they highlight begin with. And so this is your introduction. It's like your boxed text, but it's not boxed. You're not expected to read any of this to the players, okay? So the boxed text, begin with, blocking your path, you see a knight in full armor mounted upon a huge black charger. You don't recognize his coat of arms. And then right away, the name of that knight is Sir Victor. Sir Victor is accompanied by a young squire who is very lazy. We don't have a name for the squire. We just know he's very lazy. So you can name the squire whatever you want, or not even give the squire a name, but an offensive nickname, or even an inoffensive nickname. Maybe he's just called, Toby. I don't know. The situation, the knight guards the only bridge for miles around. He will not let anyone pass the bridge without paying a small fee, or if they are not knights, or jousting if they are knights. So here, that's the thing. This, right now, just with that, we have a episode or an encounter that is catering to not just knights, which the system is designed for, but also any other parties too. So let's say you wanted to have a party that was made up of, men-at-arms or sergeants or, armed peasants or merchants and their families and retinues and things like that. On any of the other options that we talked about in a previous video that are not a knight specifically. And you will have a different encounter with this knight, Sir Victor, than you would if you were a knight. If you were a peasant or lowly, you would have to pay a fine, a toll, to cross the bridge that he is guarding. He's kind of like a knightly bridge troll. But at the same time, this was something that it was relatively common in medieval literature, and stories from the medieval era was the idea of the knight that would block the road and force any other knights to, fight them in a joust, sometimes to the death, sometimes just, for a little experience. And their goal was, because the winner would be paid a bounty by the loser, because the winner wins the loser's horse and armor. That's the tradition. And so in order to get their horse and armor back, they would have to pay a fine or a bounty to the knight that won the joust. And the bounty could be anything that the knight that won decides is acceptable. So it could be a large, huge sum of money. It could be a single copper penny if it's a friendly match, like a penny ante. It could be nothing. Maybe the knight does not want to accept any bounty at all and wants to keep the armor and horse because they need it for themselves. Well, that could happen and did happen. It can be a lot of different things. And that's part of the fun of it, is you actually, as a storyteller, can play with this a little bit and balance the difficulty or the penalty for losing according to what you want, what kind of story you want to tell, and what kind of NPC you want Sir Victor to be. In this case, Sir Victor is a more kindly knight. So let's get on, moving on. Short-term goals. Sir Victor, he wants to learn to joust better and make small amounts of money along the way. Okay. Long-term goals. He wants to gain a good, loving wife who can cook well. This Sir Victor sounds like a pretty average guy. You know, he's not highfalutin. He doesn't have a lot of grandiose dreams and goals. He wants to learn how to be a better jouster because that's a core skill for knighthood. And he wants to get married. And, you know, and he's not like, I want to be married to the most beautiful woman in the world. I want to be married to a princess. I want to be married to... He's like, I want to be married to someone who knows how to cook. Like, I don't... cool. More power to you, dude. Good luck. I think that's kind of neat. It's neat that they list the short-term goals and the long-term goals for something that could very easily have been a throwaway. But they've listed that here so that you can work that into conversation as a storyteller and make Sir Victor seem like a more fleshed out character than he might be if his quirk was simply lonely, right? If there's just one word, lonely, and you're like, oh, what am I going to do with that? I don't know. Well, now you've got guidance for what to do with that. Okay, moving on. His planned activity. Challenge all suitable comers to a friendly joust. Friendly. Using fellowship skill to make friends with the adventurers first, if possible. If he is mocked or rudely refused, he demands to fight in serious combat with his ridiculer to preserve his honor. So as long as your characters are polite, even if, he acts a bit buffoonish or, isn't the most honorable looking person they've met, as long as they're polite to him and they treat him with respect, then he's going to have a friendly joust with them. They may exchange some pennies. And then they move on. And maybe they have a new friend, a traveling companion that can move with them and add a little extra muscle to their pack. Or maybe they meet him up later and maybe he's found that house and family and that he wants. And then, they run into Sir Victor when they need shelter for the night in the middle of a storm. And suddenly here is Sir Victor, this knight that they knew. And he's like, yes, of course, come inside. I remember you. You were wonderful people. Come on in. Good fellowship. You're making connections. That's cool. I like it. All right. But if you're rude to him, he will no, we're gonna fight, and we're gonna fight for real. Totally understandable. I mean, that's kind of how things were at this time, which is as long as you're polite, you can get away with some stuff. But the moment you start being rude and mean and crass and ridicule people, and you find yourself then fighting to defend your life. And anyone who's smart knows that anytime you do that, you're putting yourself at risk, and it's not wise to do that when you don't have to, right? So it's better to be polite than to risk having to defend yourself, even if you're really good at doing so. Okay, moving on. Next section is personality. So they go into Sir Victor's personality. Sir Victor is a country bumpkin without any real training, but he is determined to learn the hard way. His choice. He is quite friendly after the joust and invites everyone into his tent to eat and drink. He is also quite brave. He has a presence of 3. And not afraid to fight. So he's a bit clumsy, lacking in training, but he's not afraid. That kind of sounds a bit like Heath Ledger's character from A Knight's Tale, come to think of it. He wasn't afraid either. He wasn't great at the beginning. He got better over time. But his main thing was he was fearless. Cool. I like that. That's a good caveat, a good context for all of that. Special effect. Aha! Save in combat is his special effect. One use, representing Fool's Luck. Don't use this during a friendly joust. He will use this to save himself if defeated in serious combat, or to help a friend if he joins the adventurers on their travels. All right, so if someone does behave rudely towards him and he decides to challenge them, you as a storyteller have an out. You have a special effect that can save his life and then save him for a future interaction. Kind of neat. It introduces the concept of special effects to the players in a way that probably won't cost them too much in the long run if they're running afoul of Sir Victor. Frankly, if they're running afoul of Sir Victor, I think they've made a few mistakes along the way. I mean, really, honestly, let's be real. But also it can be something that helps them. Let's say they befriend Sir Victor, and then after that they next run into a dragon. Aha! And then Sir Victor can use that thing. He can save himself, or maybe he can use it, with the storyteller's permission. He can use it to save someone else, right? That's kind of it's a neat thing, and so I like that being there. I like the fact that they spell it out for you. It's neat. All right. Hi, I have a cat on my lap. Isn't that fun? Okay. Scenes in the episode. All right, sorry, it took me a moment to read that writing. Some of the font in here, the fancy medieval font, is sometimes hard to read. I mean, oh well. All right, so the first scene is the introduction. And Sir Victor bows to the first knight in your group, nearly falling off his huge but clumsy-looking warhorse in the process, and gives a big grin. "My name is Sir Victor. I am here to challenge all comers to chivalrous combat. Which of you will honor me with a joust, good sirs?" he says. Aha. Sir Victor enjoys talking about the deed for which he was knighted, in which he defeated 3 Saxon raiders single-handed. If the adventurers talk with Sir Victor, make a fellowship throw to see if he befriends them. They may try simple opposed resolutions with their peasants to resist his charm if they are suspicious of the lad. So that's neat, because right away he is able to use his own fellowship skill to attempt to befriend the party. Now, normally, I know in a lot of D&D games, there's not a whole lot of opportunities for the NPCs to try to use skills on the player characters. Usually it's the player characters responding to the NPCs with their skills, whether that's in deception or diplomacy or perception, trying to perceive someone trying to fool you. But in this case, it's an outright, hey, I'm going to toss to see if this guy manages to charm you guys. And if he succeeds, then you guys feel some fellowship with him. I'm a little on the fence about this one. I know that this is something that, because the original version of this book was published a long time ago, and this might be an artifact of that time period and that mindset. But at the same time, I think it does serve a purpose when you're introducing your players to role-playing and saying, okay, you know what? This is what this is about. And I'm going to use this moment to kind of show you that, you aren't always going to be in control of everything that happens to your character. And it's good to learn to roll with those punches with something that is relatively benign. It introduces also an aspect of the social conflict resolutions that can happen in other parts of the game, because that's how social conflict resolutions can work. You're using your social skills to try to persuade somebody, or to avoid being persuaded by somebody, or avoid being deceived. And so that's also introducing that aspect of the game in a way that is relatively benign. I mean, if it succeeds, then your characters have an extra friend for a while, or at least someone that is thinking positively towards them and whom they should feel positively towards as well. If it fails, then maybe they're a little suspicious of this overly gregarious young knight that seems a bit less skilled than he thinks he is. And you can move on with that information as well. So it's a neat option. I like that it's there. And then he will be deeply offended if no one deigns to joust with him. That's part of the whole, he's going to start challenging somebody for real thing. He'll be, he will be deeply offended. If there's a knight in that group and they're absolutely refusing his challenge and being rude about it, oh, he's going to be incensed and he's going to challenge them for real, not for funsies. I kind of like that because it shows that Sir Victor is a kind guy. He's a knight. He's, relatively nice. And he's got very humble aspirations. But he still is a knight. And he still has some pride. And is quite willing to defend it. So, cool. I think Sir Victor is a pretty decent dude overall. I would quite be interested in running this scenario for players in the future. I like it. It's very basic, but it's very solid. Okay, moving on. Scene 2 is jousting. Jousting, Sir Victor is not a very good jouster, but he is good-natured enough to give everyone a chance to dismount him. So this guy doesn't quit. All right? And he's happy about it. He's not going to sit there and grumble and complain and whine and moan that, oh my gosh, everyone defeated me and it's going to be bad. No, he's like, cool. Oh my gosh, did you see how far that you knocked me off the saddle? Oh my, that was so cool. Yeah, hey, get your buddy over here. Let's do that again. Let's do that again. And he gets back on his own horse and he's like, all right, I got another lance. We got another lance. Let's go. I want to go. I want to joust. I want to fight. Okay, you, let's go. Come on, let's do it. This is great. You knocked me on my butt again. Oh my gosh, you guys are fantastic. I can't wait to joust with you more. I mean, maybe he won't say it in that much of an excited voice, but he's going to be happy. I like that. This guy's cool. Sir Victor's kind of neat. He's growing on me, right? If Sir Victor manages to beat anyone, he requests that they pay a small debt of honor to him in the form of 1 to 2 silver coins. That's nothing compared to the value of a horse and armor. Sir Victor is not rubbing it in anyone's faces if he manages to win. He's excited, he's happy, and he wants something in exchange for his victory, but he's not lording it over anyone. He's not going to sit there and say, I'm so great and you're so bad. He's like, oh, that was cool. Well fought. Just give me 2 silver coins and we're good. And you can have all your stuff back. And I would rather be friends with you than have some sort of animosity between us because that was a cool fight. Okay. If he gets any amount of money from a defeated enemy, he will be pleased. And if they laugh and ride on, he won't be upset. That's the thing. If he gets the money, he will be happy. If after, he defeats them, they laugh and ride on, he won't be upset. Cool. So he's not like, trying to lord it over people so much. If he won, he wins graciously. I like that about this encounter. They're emphasizing this as making it a friendly thing. It's a little bit of conflict, but it's not so much that's going to derail everything you got working on it. Okay? And then the last one, a modest feast. So in this scene, after the joust, Sir Victor invites the adventurers to join him in a small feast during which he toasts the winner, unless he won, in which he sings a rousing song to cheer up the losers. So if he wins, he entertains you. And if you win, he also entertains you because he wants, to him, the friendship and the camaraderie and the experience of jousting is more important. That's what they're emphasizing in this. They're explaining it very clearly. This is one encounter, but it's explained in so much detail. I love it. because from this detail, like I could run an encounter with Sir Victor that could take like 2 hours to play out, not because people aren't doing stuff, but because people are doing stuff. I have enough information to keep conversations going. I have enough information that he could be jousting multiple nights and having cool interactions with them, and then a bit of friendly banter back and forth as they increase the camaraderie. And then there's the feast afterwards as they're exchanging information. He might tell them a bit about what's in the road up ahead. They might share a bit of their adventures with him. They're passing on stories of their fame and allowing their fame to grow. Sir Victor's going to tell stories about the knights that defeated him. He's not ashamed. He's going to allow your fame to increase. And if you defeat him, then his fame will increase too, because he's sharing those stories and he's friendly about it. And why wouldn't you share stories about him too? He's an example of, in my opinion, what some of these young beginner knights ought to be like themselves. He's setting up those expectations in a cool way. All right. But now the last bit is the stat block. That's pretty straightforward too. It can fit on less than a whole note card. So Sir Victor, he has approximately, make sure I've read this right, 850 fame. 850 fame. He hasn't even gotten to his first skill increase. 850. Okay. He has a brawn of 3 and a presence of 3. Excuse me. He's perfectly average. Nothing wrong with this guy. He's just a regular guy. Skills. Agility 1. Arms 2. So he's got some training in arms. Courtesy 1. Fellowship 1. Jousting 1. Riding 1. Has a wide breadth of skills, but only basically trained in most of them. Excuse me. Similar to how most of the player characters are going to be when they first start out. So this guy is serving as a great example of what a player character could be and how they interact. In fact, actually, if one of the player characters does happen to be killed during an episode, you could easily bring in a Sir Victor as a new character real fast. And that could be a way for the party to meet their next companion, right? As Sir Victor, they meet up in this against a Sir Victor-like character who then turns out to be the next character of the player that lost their character. That's kind of cool. It's a good introduction. And this gives you a good template to use for that kind of introduction. All right, possessions, heavy scale armor, very rusty, +3 in combat, -1 to presence for prestige. He's not a shiny guy. Okay, very rusty. Battle axe, +1 in combat, a lance, +1 in the charge, +2 if successful riding throw is made. Okay. Very old, but large and impressive warhorse. -1 to riding, +1 to presence. Normal for combat. And on top of that, he has amassed 10 silver coins. His combat totals. He throws 4 to the joust, 9 with the lance. Riding skill success is impossible with his warhorse, so you don't have to worry about that thing. So 9 with the lance, and then 9 with the battle axe. That means that's how many coins or dice you will toss with this character. And that's the whole thing. So again, how these are set up is pretty simple. They give you the type. So whether it's going to be a nuisance or a challenge or an attack or an ambush or a rescue, right? And you get a basic idea of this is how this is supposed to go. And then they give you where to begin, directly provide you with information about the NPCs you're going to meet right away as you meet them, so you don't have to wait and go all the way to the bottom of the thing in order to get that information, right? So in a way, you could almost play this out as you're reading it. I would recommend reading it all the way first, but I mean, you could almost get away with doing that. Going through information about the NPC, short-term goals, long-term goals, the piece's current plan of action, and then we get information about what they're going to do, what their personality is, and then a special effect. So that's cool. And then we get into the scenes. There's 3 scenes. They're laid out pretty basically. There's not a lot of information here. But that's enough for an episode that will probably last about 2 hours of gameplay. Might only last an hour of gameplay, depending on how big the party is and how much they want to interact with him. Excuse me. But if they're interacting with him, if they're engaging with him, and if you're playing him to the hilt, then you probably get 2 hours out of this character, maybe longer. And that's kind of cool. But it's not going to overstay its welcome either, which is nice. So this could also be a great encounter to run after your session 0, where everyone's creating their characters. You spend 3 hours creating characters for whatever reason. I'm not sure why you would spend that long, but maybe you've got a group of 6, and it just takes that long. And so you only got maybe 1 hour left, and so you run a quick encounter with a Sir Victor. Done. That's the basic anatomy of things. And then at the bottom, they have the stat blocks. And the stat blocks are pretty basic. You're listing out their fame. You're listing out, first their name, then their fame, then their presence and their brawn, then their skills, and then their possessions, because the possessions affect the skills, and then combat totals. Combat totals being listed at the bottom is kind of interesting. I would have put it closer to the top personally, but then again, maybe you don't want combat to be the thing that people get to first. Maybe you want them to be interacting with the character more. Oh, excuse me. So having them close to the top is a me thing, but I can kind of see why they didn't do that as well. That's the basic anatomy of an episode. As we move on to further videos, I hope to actually play through a episode or 3 and kind of show you how those work that way. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, so I'm not going to make promises on that exactly, but know that that is one of the things I'm hoping to do. And maybe even go through a few of the episodes in the episode book, because I think they're fancy and they're cool. And I want to share some of that information while I can. I hope you all enjoy this. I hope it was useful, give you an idea of how to create a scenario and how to take what seems to be a very benign and small thing that could just fit on a note card and turn it into an actual built-up encounter for your player characters, and how you could flesh out those little things, but also how you can take a larger encounter and kind of squish it down into something a little bit smaller. I hope that this was helpful and interesting for you. Thank you so much for stepping by, and peace be with you all. Bye-bye now.